podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC and your daily reminder that the Reds are top of the league. And a chance to go 9 points clear tonight as we take on Nottingham Forest at the City Ground. Obviously, Arsenal playing Spurs tomorrow. Those are the two teams closest to us, Forest and Arsenal. So we beat Forest tonight. That puts us 9 points clear of them with the game in hand. And then obviously it will put us 9 points clear of Arsenal with the same number of games played. But then with a bit of luck, they might just slip up tomorrow against Tottenham. Let's just say that ends in a draw. All of a sudden we come out of the week 8 points clear of them with a game in hand. And wouldn't that be the ideal situation for everybody? Now, Arsenal fans are very giddy and Liverpool fans are in uproar because there's been reports today that Arsenal are closing in on a deal to sign Martin Zubimendi in the summer. Not now, in the summer. And of course, this has led to meltdowns. Now, obviously, look, we went all the way down the road with him last summer. We had a contract agreed with him. It looked like we were moving towards an agreement on the fee with Real Sociedad. Then they backed away. And then he changed his mind and ultimately decided to stay. He is a flake. This is not the first time that it happened. It happened in negotiations with Bayern and it happened in negotiations with Arsenal previously, that he had decided to make a move and then either got strong-armed by the club or just backed out himself. Whichever happens, happens. There's a real possibility he lands in England and 3 months later he wants to go home. There really is. But he's a good player. Like, let's not knock the signing for Arsenal. He is a good player. He will fit well with Declan Rice because he is a number 6 and Declan Rice is not. And only foolish people ever thought that he was. So Rice will stay playing the box-to-box midfield role. Odegaard will play the attacking role and Zubimendi will sit at the base of midfield. But here's the thing. What's Arsenal's biggest issue? Scoring goals. Scoring goals from open play when the game is tied. That's Arsenal's biggest issue. Martin Zubimendi will not solve that issue. He does not fix their problem. And also, while he is a slightly better passer than Thomas Partey, he's a better short passer. I think Partey is a better long passer and a better line breaker at times. He's definitely a downgrade on Partey defensively. Like, he's an upgrade on Jorginho, but he's a very similar type to Jorginho, including his size, his foot speed. So you do wonder if this weakens them a little bit defensively, makes them a bit easier on the eye and a bit more progressive, but doesn't ultimately solve the issue of putting the ball in the back of the net. It will mean that Mikel Arteta moves towards the 800 million in spend. Arsenal are also believed to be targeting a striker and a winger for the summer, which could put them well over the 900 million marker, which means that if they don't win the league next year, surely Mikel Arteta would have to be sacked. Surely he would have to be sacked if he spent 900 million and failed to deliver. They're already staring at another trophyless season this season, having gone out of the FA Cup in the position they're in the League Cup, 6 behind us, having played a game more in the league. And while they're in the Champions League and, you know, they're currently sitting third in the group, it's a fragile third. It's a very fragile third. There's a lot of other teams on the same number of points and a lot of other teams on 1 point less who are not in the top 8. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility that they slip out of the top 8, end up having to go through the play-in, and maybe don't make it through the play-in. Or if they do, end up with a tougher draw in the last 16. Either way, you wouldn't really fancy them to win the European Cup this year, especially as Saka might not be back for that round of 16. And if he's not, do you fancy them to beat any top team? Really? Because I don't. Not without him. Not with the attack looking the way it looks. Struggling to create anything of note from open play. So overly reliant on set pieces or individual moments of magic. No real cohesion to the team. And the manager clearly starting to get very rattled with some of the excuses. So wouldn't have too much concern about them as things currently stand. And this signing of Zubimendi, like, I get that it's frustrating. I get that it's a little bit embarrassing that he was our top target last summer. But ultimately, if we had decided to go back for him, we'd probably be getting news today that we had agreed a deal with Martin Zubimendi to come in the summer. But Martin Zubimendi doesn't actually solve our problems in midfield. And if you think back to the summer, the big concern that a lot of people, including myself, voiced was that a Martin Zubimendi, Alexis McAllister double pivot, while it would be very good on the ball, would be diminutive, lightweight, and not the most mobile off the ball. And that's still the same situation. As Zubimendi, Alexis McAllister midfield lacks physicality, lacks mobility. Even with Szoboszlai ahead of them, it lacks real power. It's even worse if it's a Zubimendi, Gravenberch, Alexis midfield three. That is, like, Alexis is by far the most physical player in that midfield. And he'd be your 10. So that doesn't really work. We need physicality in midfield. What we need is more the Carlos Baliba type or the Aurelian Tchouameni type. That's what we need in midfield. Tchouameni, Alexis, and Szoboszlai. Now, that's a midfield you can get on board with. Tchouameni, Gravenberch, and Alexis. Tchouameni, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai. Tchouameni, Alexis, and Jones. Tchouameni, Alexis, and Gravenberch as a 10. All of these things work much better than the notion of Martin Zubimendi, who, again, is a very, very good player, but doesn't solve the issues we have in midfield. Yes, he would help. He would help with our central progression. He would help us move the ball better through midfield, because Gravenberch either doesn't have it's not that he doesn't have the ability, he has the ability to pass well. He doesn't seem to have whether it's he doesn't have the managerial freedom to do it, whether the manager's telling him not to take risks on the ball. He's very risk adverse. He doesn't take risks on the ball as a passer. He backs himself a lot more as a carrier than a passer. So we struggle at times with central progression because he'll get it and dump it off to a centre-back or dump it off to a full-back. And if Trent goes, then that becomes an even bigger issue than it is now. So Zubimendi could solve that, but he doesn't solve the physicality issue. And that's a problem. So let's not get too worked up over. I know people are just in the mood to be furious because it's a transfer window. But, like, stuff is happening. And Sam Maguire reported yesterday that we've turned down an initial approach of 70 million for Darwin, a verbal offer. Now, James Jimbo Pierce has come out and said they haven't received any offers. I will take Sam Maguire's word over James Pierce's word 100 times out of 100. 100 times out of 100. Sam does not need to put that stuff out for likes and retweets and clout. He just doesn't. He passes on so much information to other people and lets them run with it because he just doesn't want the hassle of it himself. So when he says something, when he puts his name to something, you can be certain that it's true. You can be absolutely certain that it's true. So if he's saying that there's an offer from the Saudis for Darwin, then there's an offer from the Saudis for Darwin. And it sounds like we're holding out for a specific price. And if we can get that price, we'll move him on and be ready to move on the target that we have lined up, whoever that may be. Could be multiple targets. There's obviously reports that we are, again, this has come from Sam. Sam and Ben Boxic were the ones who've done most of the legwork on this. And then some German reporters have chimed in, and later than everybody else, you get a couple of English reporters following it up. Stefanos Tsimas of Nuremberg. Now, he's on loan there from PAOK. And apparently we have now started negotiations with Nuremberg because they have an option to buy. So we would need them to take up that option to buy, which I believe is 18 million euro. And then we would immediately buy him from them. And the price supposedly is 25 million pounds. So 18 million euros, about 15 million pounds. We would pay a 10 million premium on top of that, plus some add-ons to get him in. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, but what about Jayden Danns? And it's a valid question. It absolutely is. Jayden Danns is a supremely talented young player. The idea that we can't have two of them, though, is just silly. It's just silly. Why can't we have two teenage strikers at the club? And if we sign, say, João Pedro on top of that, there's no problem there. Other than a good problem, which is that you've now got really talented players all competing and going head to head with each other to develop and get better and being driven by that competition. So there's no issue. It might be a thing where they look at Jayden Danns and think, there's a lot to like, and obviously there is, but he's 2 years away, which is probably accurate. He's probably 2 years away from being ready to contribute regularly for us. And maybe Stefanos Tsimas, they feel, can be ready to contribute next season because he's just further along in his development, having played a lot more. So we could go into next season with Gakpo, another left winger, Jota, another striker, Mo, and Tsimas. Maybe that's the six. And in the following year, maybe Jota moves on. And now it's that striker plus Tsimas, plus Danns, plus Mo, plus Gakpo, and another winger. Tsimas isn't just a 9. He can play in wide areas as well. He's an all-round forward. So don't just mark him down as, well, he's going to be a 9. He could be something different. There's also the possibility that in time, Arne Slot is looking to move to a 2-man front line. So you're going to want to have 4 strikers at the club. That could be in the years post-Mo, where we have 2 right-sided players, 2 left-sided players, and 4 central players. And maybe we don't play with a number 10. Maybe we just play with a double pivot in midfield. Something more akin to a 4-4-2. Because football evolves. And shapes change. And patterns change. But never get yourself too worked up over the idea that signing a very, very talented young player blocks the path of another talented young player. If the other young player is good enough, they will forge their own path anyway. And that needs to be the situation for all of our young players. Nobody at Liverpool should just be handed a straight line into the first team. Not now. Not while we are where we are. It was different years ago when we weren't very good. So young players kind of got a pathway in, even if they weren't ready or weren't good enough. Because it didn't harm us at that point. Now it hurts us if somebody who's not ready or not good enough plays. Because the standard around them is so high that we're looking to win every single game. Now, in some ways, it's easier to put in players who aren't quite good enough because the others can carry them a little bit more. But they do become more glaring if they're not up to the level. Whereas in years gone by, because we weren't very good, everybody just sort of blended in together. So signing Simas is not something that anybody should be against. And we may become a lot more transactional. And someone like a Jayden Danns, rather than being viewed as a future first-team player, might be viewed as a future 40 or 50 million pound sale. The same goes for Jarrell Quansah, Connor Bradley, Ben Doak, Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones, all of them. Academy players may be purely viewed as profit. And that's obviously not something that will sit well with a lot of people. But given the nature of the profit and sustainability rules, it might be what's in the best interest of the club long term. You know, there will be some that are just untouchable. And maybe Jayden Danns is one of them. Like, he may well be. I think we'd all look at Trey and Rio and say they probably will be. But again, we don't know what's going to come around the corner in 2 years. And maybe we're in a situation where we do look to sell, or they want more minutes than we can offer them. And they're really good, but not quite good enough to start for us. So when a big offer comes in, maybe we look to take it. We'll put protections on it, you know, sell on, buyback, etc., matching rights, all that good stuff. But
this is MLS and U.S. soccer commentator Brian Dunseth here to tell you the only podcast you need to fulfill your weekly soccer needs. It's Week in the Tackle.
And I'm Tom Rennie. We'll talk the Premier League title race, the Champions League, MLS expansionism, and the ongoing disappointments of our respective teams. It's all on Week in the Tackle.
Didn't your West Ham just win a European trophy?
Ah, that night in Prague. Sorry, what were we talking about?
A Week in the Tackle available wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single episode.
don't get overly attached to young players that haven't really proven anything yet. Because we end up with a situation like we have right now with Quansah, where people fell in love with him last year, and I think understandably so, but then started to overrate him, then set unrealistic expectations for him, and then when he didn't reach those expectations, which again were unrealistic and set by those people, they were the first ones to say, oh, he's not good enough. And not just that he's not good enough, he's shit. He went from, I've never seen anything quite like the Quansah thing. He went from better than Ibu Kanate to shit in a matter of weeks with the same group of people. Not conflicting groups, the same group of people. Baffling stuff. What else have we got then on this? Obviously, the big game tonight. We've done scouted ahead of the game. We all know that Nottingham Forest are playing very, very well. We all know that it's going to be a tough game tonight. We are aiming to avoid losing to Forest twice in a league season for the first time in 60 years. I think this is the type of game where if we show up and score early, we get the job done. Now, there's a little battle going on in the media between Arne Slot and Nuno Espirito Santo. And I don't think Arne ever meant it to go this way, but he was asked about Forest, and he rightly made the point, if you look at the money that they've spent, it's not a complete surprise that they're so high up in this high, sure. But, you know, the idea that 14th or 15th would have been a successful season was what was floating before the season, you know, because they just about stayed up the last couple of years. So if they could move a step up from that, that would be a success. And Arne rightly points out, if you see how much they've spent, which is a significant amount, so much so that they actually got points deducted last year, let's not forget. It's not a surprise that they're doing very well. Like, with the money they spent, they should have been a top half team. Nuno has fired back and said, I don't know the spending, I don't know the value. That doesn't happen. I look at a player as a human being and how can I make them better? How can I make you better? I mean, this is all fine. This is all what you expect to hear from managers. But Arne's words kind of got twisted a little bit. Like, he was pointing out they've invested heavily, so of course they're doing well. It was also possibly a bit of a shot across the bow at our own owners. Like, if you invest, you can reap the rewards of that investment. The old speculate to accumulate type of situation. If you put money in, more money will come back out. I think he was spot on at what he said. I mean, they've spent over 400 million since coming back up. There's not many clubs that have spent more than that. Obviously, some of the big clubs have. You know, Chelsea, United, Arsenal. But, like, it's the same reason Villa got top four last year. Like, Villa have spent very heavily since coming back up. Now, Emery took over and obviously did a great job in the same way Nuno's taken over and he's doing a great job. But the money they spent is part of why they're being successful. If we look at this Forest team, like, who's in that team from when they come up? Ryan Yates is the only player that plays a regular role who was in the championship with them. Let's pull their squad up at the moment. Matt Sells was signed a year ago. Carlos Miguel, the backup goalkeeper, was signed this past summer. So there's no one there. Let's see. By position. Okay, right backs. Nico Williams signed from us after promotion. Eric Da Silva signed in the summer. Ola Aina signed after they'd come up. Left backs. Harry Tifolo signed after promotion. Alex Moreno signed this past summer. Centre backs. Morato signed this past summer. Murillo signed 18 months ago. Omar Bamadeli signed 18 months ago, maybe. I think Murillo might be 2 years ago in the January, but they were in the Premier League. Willy Bolly signed after promotion. Milinkovic signed this past summer. And I believe Zach Abbott is from their academy, so didn't play in the championship for them. Central midfield, Sangaré signed after promotion. Ryan Yates was through the academy and played for them in the championship. Might have even played in League One. Elliot Anderson signed this past summer. Nico Dominguez signed after promotion in a swap deal after, who did they sign? Martin Freuler, and then they swapped him for Freuler, something like that. And Danilo signed after promotion. Ward Prowse signed this past summer. Awoniyi and Chris Wood signed after they came up, as were Hudson-Odoi, Ramon Sosa, Jota Silva, Anthony Elanga, and Morgan Gibbs-White. So, it's absolutely a fact. Of all the players that have played for them this season, the only one who played for them in the Championship is Ryan Yates, who, when everybody's fit, not first choice. And that's a pretty big squad as well. You've got 7 attackers, 7 midfielders, that's 14, 18, 20, 25, 27, 28 players, including Wayne Hennessy, who hasn't played. Wayne Hennessy, who hasn't played. Is he the only one? Yeah, everybody else. Emmanuel Dennis hasn't played this season. He's still in the squad. Everybody was signed after promotion, except for Ryan Yates and Zach Abbott, who's 18 and has never kicked the ball. He's played 2 games, but he never kicked the ball before this season. So it's literally just him. It's literally just Ryan Yates. And even if you look at the players that they've got out on loan, Matt Turner, David Carmel, Omar Richards, Marco Stemenic, and Josh Bowler, all signed after they got promoted. The only one who I think is at the club since they were in the Championship, it is Jonathan Panzo, who's played 1 league game for them and had 4 loans. So that's it. Of the entire senior playing staff, there's 2 players that played for them in the Championship, and one of them's out on loan. So you cannot deny that they've spent money and that they've bought a lot of good players and they've turned their squad over. You just can't deny it. Be different if you were looking at the squad and there was, 8 to 10 lads that played in the Championship. I saw Ipswich fans trying to back up Forest fans on this debate. And I was thinking to myself, you don't really have a leg to stand on here, because you spend a ton of money in the summer, but also you're in a different situation to Forest, where the likes of Clark and Davis and Morsey and Wolfenden and Burns and Chaplin and Slicker and Taylor and Burgess and Al-Hamidi and Townsend and Luongo and Hurst and Walton and Broadhead, they were all in your squad last year. So they all played in the Championship. So you're not in the same situation as Forest at all. And also, you came up, you bought Omari Hutchinson for 20 million. You bought Jacob Greaves for 15. Liam Delac for 15. Muric for the better part of 10. Smodix for, I think, 16. Jack Clark for 16, 17. Darrell O'Shea for 15. Albena for 12 or whatever it was. And you're currently in the process of signing Jaden Philligan for 20 million. So, these teams, you've come up. It's tremendous. It's great to have you back in the Premier League. And I fully support the idea of these clubs coming up and spending heavily to make themselves a competitive Premier League team. For me, I would like to see even a 3-window moratorium on profit and sustainability for newly promoted teams, where you can come up and spend and it will not count against your profit and sustainability. Forest got points deducted last year for overspending. And I thought, well, that's not really fair, because the only way to get out of the Championship is really to spend some money. And the only way to stay in the Premier League is to spend a lot more money. So they were spending money to be ambitious. Like Forest and Ipswich, they're spending money to show ambition, to get into the Premier League and then to stay in the Premier League. Whereas you look at a club like Everton, who broke the rules, they were spending to survive. But they had no excuse. They've been in the Premier League since the dawn of it. They've never dropped out. Their spending was the results of years of failure. So they should be punished. But clubs coming up should not be punished for being ambitious. So I didn't like Forest getting the points deduction. I hope Ipswich don't run into any hassle. I back both of them for having the ambition to come up and spend money and try and be in the Premier League for more than just a cup of tea. But ultimately, you can't then turn around and say, well, we haven't spent any money, you spent money. Like, you've spent more money since 2015 than we have. That's the argument I had Forest fans making. Liverpool have spent more money since 2015. Right. We've been in the Premier League the whole time. You were in League One for part of that. And in the Championship for most of it. But look at season to season spend when you've been in the Premier League. And you outstrip us significantly. Again, I back your argument that you shouldn't be punished for trying to stay in the division, but don't then turn around and deny the fact that you spent a shitload of money. And don't junk down the throat of a manager who's actually paying you a compliment, but also saying, like, you know, it's a return on the money they've put in, which, again, may have been a message to our own owners, who, as we know, don't necessarily love to spend money at all turns. Let's have a quick gander on AnfieldIndex.com and see what is what. Lots of podcasts coming this week, but you've got David Lynch talking about Dominic Szoboszlai. You've got a piece on Virgil, a piece on Chiesa. You've got a piece on Salah and Jota. Podcast-wise, there is a tad predictable, and it is Tadiwa joined by Ruby T. Naylor, who's a Nottingham Forest fan, fittingly enough, to preview game week 21 of this Premier League season. You've also got a new Under Pressure. It's Dan Kennett, Phil Barker, and Daniel Rhodes. So check that one out. Dave Davis and Phil Barker have done a transfer market metrics show, so do check that out as well. Of course, there will be post-match Raw after tonight's game. It is myself, Trev, and I believe Carl Matchin. I'm almost certain he told me that yesterday, so you have that to look forward to as well. Right, folks, that's going to do me. I will see you all tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.